My name is Claire Donovan, I'm 33 years old. And for 8 Christmases in a row, my parents packed my suitcase in early December and sent me to a boarding school winter program in Vermont while my younger sister stayed home for what my mother proudly called our perfect family Christmas. For years, I believed it was because the school offered special academic opportunities. Then, one December morning, a stranger accidentally mailed me a family photo that was never meant for my eyes. One picture destroyed every excuse I'd spent my childhood believing. By the time my parents finally knocked on my front door 7 years later, they weren't carrying wrapped presents or apologies. They came asking for something they thought only I could give them. That's when they discovered the little girl they kept sending away had learned something far more valuable than forgiveness. The first suitcase appeared when I was 9. Dark green, with my initials stitched neatly across the front. My mom smiled as she placed it on my bed and said, "You're lucky, sweetheart. Not every child gets this opportunity." I believed her because children almost always believe the people who tuck them in at night. 3 days later, Dad drove me from our home in Portland, Maine, to St. Matthew's Academy in rural Vermont. Snow covered everything, making the campus look like a Christmas postcard. My parents helped me unpack, kissed my forehead, promised they'd call every evening, then climbed back into their SUV. I watched through the frosted dormitory window as they disappeared down the long driveway. 20 minutes later, another girl showed me something on her tablet. A social media post. My sister Emily, our decorated living room. Matching pajamas, smiling beside a glowing Christmas tree. The caption read, "Nothing means more than celebrating Christmas with the whole family." I stared at those 6 words until they stopped looking like English, because for the first time in my life I realized someone in that photo wasn't considered part of the family. That first Christmas should have convinced me something was wrong. But children have a remarkable talent for explaining away the people who disappoint them. I told myself my parents had forgotten how that caption sounded. Surely they didn't mean it the way it looked. The next December proved they did. Exactly 1 week before Christmas, Mom folded my sweaters into the same green suitcase while humming carols in the kitchen. She called it our tradition now. "Emily gets overwhelmed around too many holiday activities," she explained. "You enjoy school more anyway. This works better for everyone." I was only 10. But I remember wondering why. Something that worked for everyone always required only one person to leave every year. Followed the same script the boarding school offered of winter leadership program. During the day, we studied, baked cookies, volunteered at shelters, and watched old Christmas movies inside the dormitory. The teachers were kind. My roommates became friends. They never made me feel unwanted. The loneliness always arrived after dinner. Parents filled the parking lot, collecting their children for Christmas break. Suitcases rolled across the snow while hugs echoed through the campus. One by one, every dorm room emptied until only a handful of us remained. Then, sometime around Christmas Eve, my phone would buzz. Another family picture. Emily opening gifts, Dad carving the turkey, Mom laughing beside the fireplace. Sometimes the captions changed. "Family is everything. Our favorite tradition. Christmas with the people who matter most." I stopped opening them after my 4th winter instead. I saved every single photo inside a hidden folder on my laptop. I didn't know why. I only knew throwing them away somehow felt like helping them erase me. When I turned 16, I finally gathered enough courage to ask my grandmother why I was always the one sent away. She looked genuinely confused. "Boarding school?" she asked quietly. "Honey, your mother told everyone you begged to spend Christmas there because you hated crowded family holidays." The room went completely silent for years. My parents hadn't only been lying to me, they had been rewriting my story for everyone else. And for the first time I realized the boarding school wasn't the secret. I was. That conversation with my grandmother changed the way I remembered every Christmas I'd ever lived. Once you discover someone has been rewriting your story, Every old memory starts asking different questions. I stopped confronting my parents instead. I started paying attention by my senior year of high school. I knew exactly when Mom bought matching pajamas. I knew Emily always opened one present on Christmas Eve. I knew Dad cooked cinnamon rolls every Christmas morning. I knew all of this because they posted nearly everything online. The only person missing from every single picture was me when I graduated from college at 22. I accepted a marketing position in Seattle, Washington, more than 3,000 miles from Portland. My parents hugged me at the airport, telling everyone how proud they were that I was finally chasing my dreams. The truth was much simpler. Distance felt safer than hope. Over the next 7 years, I built a life that belonged entirely to me. I bought a small townhouse. I adopted an energetic golden retriever named Milo. I made friends who became family by choice instead of obligation. Most importantly, every December, my dining room filled with people who had nowhere else to spend Christmas: military spouses, neighbors living alone, international students, widowers, divorced parents without their children that year. 20 people around one table, sometimes more. Nobody needed an invitation twice for the first time. Christmas felt warm instead of earned. Then, one cold afternoon in early November, my phone lit up with Emily's name. She almost never called. Her voice sounded exhausted. "Dad has early-stage heart failure," she whispered. "Mom's been taking care of him alone. And I can't keep doing everything anymore." I stayed quiet. Then she said the sentence I somehow already knew was coming. "You've always been the responsible one, Claire. We need you to come home. Not we miss you, not we're sorry, not we were wrong." They needed me even after 7 years apart. My role inside the family hadn't changed. I wasn't their daughter returning for Christmas. I was the backup plan. 3 days later, another call came, this time from my mother. She sounded strangely cheerful, as if we had spoken every week instead of every few years. "We've already told everyone you're coming for Christmas," she said. "The family is so excited." I looked at the calendar on my wall. December was still weeks away. They had already made the announcement without asking me, just like they had packed my suitcase before I ever knew I was leaving. I almost said no before she finished the sentence, not because I didn't care about my father, because I already knew how this story always ended. Someone else made the plans. I was expected to make the sacrifice still. I booked the flight, not for my mother, not for Christmas, for the man who had quietly watched me disappear every December without ever finding the courage to stop it. When I arrived in Portland, nothing had changed except the wrinkles on the walls and the people living inside them. The Christmas tree stood in its usual corner. The stockings hung above the fireplace. There were 3 embroidered names: Frank, Olivia, Emily. Mine had disappeared years ago. Nobody mentioned it. Christmas dinner felt strangely normal until my mother stood and tapped her wine glass. The room fell silent. She smiled, the same practiced smile I remembered from childhood. "I'm so happy our family is finally together again," she announced. "Claire has decided to move back home after the holidays to help take care of her father." The table erupted with applause. My aunt smiled at me. My cousins congratulated me. My mother accepted every compliment as if the decision had already been signed. No one noticed I had never spoken. I slowly placed my fork on my plate. Then I stood. "I didn't decide that," I said quietly. Every voice disappeared. My mother laughed nervously. "Oh, sweetheart, don't be modest." I looked around the table before answering. "I already arranged professional home care 3 weeks ago." Every face turned toward me. "The nurses start Monday. Their salaries are paid for the next 18 months. Dad looked at me with tears gathering in his eyes. Emily stared in complete shock. Then I continued, "I also found a physical therapist, a cardiologist closer to home, and a meal service that delivers every afternoon." My mother blinked. "But then who's staying?" I smiled for the first time that evening. "No one." Silence. "I love Dad enough to make sure he's cared for." I looked directly at my mother. "But I don't love being assigned a life I never agreed to." She whispered my name, Claire. I gently interrupted. For 8 Christmases you told everyone boarding school was my choice. I reached into my purse and placed 8 printed family photos on the dining table. Every Christmas, every matching pair of pajamas. Every smiling caption, every year without me beside them. I placed the acceptance letters from St. Matthew's Academy showing the winter program had always begun only after my parents requested holiday housing, no scholarship, no academic requirement. Only permission slips signed by my mother. The room became painfully quiet. Even Emily covered her mouth finally. My father pushed himself to his feet. His voice trembled more than his hands. I knew. She cried every year. He looked at me, and I told myself she'd understand. Someday. I walked over and hugged him. I do understand. Now. He frowned. What? You were too afraid to disappoint Mom. Then I stepped back, but I'm not. I kissed his forehead, wished everyone a peaceful Christmas, and walked toward the front door behind me. Nobody tried to stop me. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't the daughter leaving Christmas behind. I was simply walking toward the family I had spent 7 years building, the one where nobody ever had to earn a seat at the table.